the currency is actually effectively backed by property securities, i.e. mortgages. And because only half of the mortgages are secured against property, and that's only on half of the property there is, okay, that tail which used to wag the dog used to be the dog, right? So you have to, there was a brilliant article on the Schroders blog a couple of years ago, 175 years of the property market, whatever, and it shows price to income ratios, the level of home ownership, etc., and how it goes up and down. We're in the process of it going down, and build to rent is part of that. The attack on the build to rent mortgage market particularly, but also the cash part of that market, because what happens with monetary inflation, they've expanded the money supply, right? People with first access to that are BTR funds, okay, not Bank of Mum and Dad, obviously, which means that when what's happening at the moment causes a credit crunch, okay, that means that people that want liquidity, i.e. expressions of central bank liabilities, cash, money, right, have to sell, and that forces prices down. Now that's a lot stickier at the moment because half of all property in the UK is owned outright. But ultimately, if you starve the real economy of money, right, and people can't, you know, there's a limit to what people can earn, and earnings are so much less and such a small fraction of the money supply as represented by bank balance sheet deposits, right? So effectively what's happening is you cause a credit crunch, force the weak hands, and you make as many weak hands as you need to make. And then what happens is you get control of the assets, which you then sell again at the new price level, right? And in that process, both the value of cash deposits or skill in the game money that people have earned, but also their wealth is diluted. But it's a two-stage process, right? Most analysis will sort of say, oh, right, it's linear. You go from A to C through B, and there's the line. Well, actually, in a dynamic equation, right, all things don't remain equal as you go along, and so you have to you go from A to C, or well, go but via all of the letters, you know, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. You see, now it's a hard way to think dynamically, right? And clearly the money power, and call it that, understand this perfectly well. So there's a guy on Twitter called Jan Moulin, and who I I hate the word follower. I'm not a follower, but whose feed I accept into mine. Okay, I've clicked to accept his feed into mine. Now, what he said the other day is, you know, is it deliberate or by accident? And I said, well, it's clearly deliberate, and it is. And so the way.
Hold on a second. Do you want to carry on? Because if I interrupt you, I think I might interrupt your train of thought.
You won't interrupt my train of thought. You won't. I mean, I've figured all this out. You can interrupt me as much as you like.
Okay. I think to set everything up, you were talking about a change in the ratio in relation to Bank of Mum and Dad and owned properties, and some sort of change in the ratio and liquidity and buy to rent. and the significance of ratio changes and cash in relation to the attack on buy to rent.
It's build to rent.
Build to rent, sorry.
So buy to let, build to rent. Buy to let is typically smaller landlords. Okay. And it's people who have sought to invest money, often from downsizing from larger houses to smaller houses, and receive a return which is greater than the actuarial sort of mandated types of returns that you would get from financial instruments, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, basically the banking system doesn't create wealth, it extracts wealth, and it's got so big and is now extracting wealth at a remarkably high rate. You thought 2008 was bad. You thought during the pandemic was bad. Just wait till you see next year. Unless people stand up to this and realise that they are actually being robbed blind, and the purpose is to rob the population of individual agency through choices that they have, through acquiring personal assets, personal wealth. Right? It's absolutely clear that the hiking further, farther and faster, okay, since December 2021, okay, was going to cause problems in the economy. But it's not a good old-fashioned, well, we'll slow it down and get inflation down. The actual wealth transfer mechanism that's ongoing, okay, because they've done so much of it so close together, it's obvious what they're doing, right? And what it's doing in terms of people that want to act locally or do things at a kind of a useful level, if you will, aren't able to do that because equity investment, okay, is being sucked into this whole liquidity trap. And so by offering someone a 6% cash deposit rate, right, okay, that means that the liquidity in the economy is taken out, right? And what the banks will then do, the BTR funds, which is basically the banks anyway, are hoping to buy at a discount, okay, and then resell it at a rebased value based on the expansion in the monetary supply, and that allows the whole thing to go round again, right? So the key word here is in the type of monetary system we have, the people with the first use of credit, okay, have an advantage over people that have access to credit further down the line, and their advantage is a first mover's advantage because they get to buy things before their value reflates to reflect the increased money supply when people because diluting someone holding cash or holding, say, financial instruments is harder than diluting someone holding real assets because real assets are kind of less liquid. But that's what's happening here. And so but there's a bottom built into it for the way the rules are done in terms of it's really confidence in the monetary system because there isn't actually any limit to what banks can lend as debt. There's kind of a at the macro level because outstanding balances clearing at the end of the day have to be balanced against each other. Effectively, in a system which you've got to try and kid people that it's not rigged, it is rigged, but to kid people that it's not rigged, you need several banks sort of saying we're kept honest because we can't get out of whack with each other, otherwise we'll go bust, That's theoretically the limit is the market between banks, right? The competition is, well, if people put all their money or do all their business with one bank because it's better than another bank. It's not. It's a cartel. They pretend to be different, but they're basically all the same. And ultimately, it's the same system. But we are really at the point where 2008 was a huge transfer in wealth. Well, here's one. I read this earlier. I haven't checked this out, right? But apparently, Getty in the 1950s was 75,000 times richer than the median US wealth, right? 75,000 times. That's a lot. Jeff Bezos is 2 million times richer than the median US wealth, right? That is a massive wealth transfer, but it's a wealth transfer into monopoly state capitalism. So it's they act together. It's the two cheeks of the same arse argument. I mean, I'm basically I'm having a recap and all the rest of it. And we've covered this in our chats, over the last several years. But hey, it is right now. It's fucking awful. I've got to say. I mean, it really is. I think that's why they're going after people like Russell Brand or whatever, because there, you notice it if you use the internet and have followed the crackdown since 2015. Well, and those of us that have used it since 2000. There are times when the floodgates are about to open, when people are having a conversation, and that conversation is very, very dangerous, right? And so authoritarian state monopoly capitalists, the fascists, the fucking Nazis, right? That isn't something they can allow. But it's got so near the surface now that it's more or less impossible not to do, without overt tyranny, and that's where we're headed, and it's pretty. I would say it's pretty serious at the moment. From an economic perspective, you see out the other side of it. I think the objective is to be like Sweden. Well, I'm in Sweden now. I've lived here 13 odd years, and in many ways it's preferable to other places. Culturally, for me, it's a more difficult place to be. I'd rather be in Wales with a sort of a Welsh mentality.
Well, you are. I mean, however much you praise the political and economic system of Sweden, which I don't often hear you do, but you're doing now. The fact is, you're not fucking Swedish. So, I mean, the bit where you say I'd rather be in Wales, I get that.
I'm not praising it. What I'm saying is that it works for the Swedes, and a lot of people in the world would feel much better off at a Swedish.
Well, the
problem is I don't. Well, the problem is that isn't going to happen. I mean, I think even Swedish living standards have dropped a lot.
There was a TikTok video that went around the other day, which was Jeremy Corbyn on LBC a few years ago, and he said he was interviewed by a Swedish journalist who said, "Come on then, what's this radical manifesto?" And when he told him everything in it, the Swedish guy just said, "We did it all that fucking years ago. Is that it?"
Well, I don't know. I am as big a cynic as I've ever been, and the Corbyn of 2015 wasn't the Corbyn of 2019. That's all I can say. I
did not mean to introduce Corbyn into the conversation. I was very interested in everything that you were saying throughout, though I didn't write any notes whilst you were speaking. Yeah, as you said, some of this stuff has been covered in different ways during our chats before.
We've chatted about it, Ranjan, but it hasn't been covered. Bits of it are covered.
I meant us.
Our problem is, or whatever, is we don't stay in our lane. I mean, critical thinkers don't stay in their lane. So I'm not saying we're the only ones that haven't stayed in our lane. So, but it is kind of converging. I mean, the best article I think that's been written on the whole pandemic during this whole period, I found it the other day again. Is this it? Where is it? Got it here somewhere, I think.
Yeah, and by the way, there are some things.
Oh, that's one.
There are some things that I'd like to mention to you at some point.
Oh, well, go for it. I mean, I'm up for a bit of a chin wag.
And it's not all divorced from what you've just told me. If you could hear me out for a second. There's a court case in London that started in June. And when I say started sitting in June, that it is itself an appeal. And that court case is the Privatbank versus Kolomoisky, and I can't remember how you pronounce his name. It may be Babuliov. So Kolomoisky, the oligarch who put Zelensky into power, one could strongly argue, many people in Ukraine believe it, say it. That guy got arrested 2 weeks ago in Ukraine, but before that, he'd been living in exile in Israel and Cyprus and Switzerland. So he has multiple passports, which you're actually not allowed in Ukraine. He's had his passport taken away from him last year. So he's stuck in Ukraine in a jail. He won't post bail. But obviously a couple of years ago when Zelensky came in, not when he came in, but just as the prestige and the noise around Zelensky grew, I noticed this oligarch story. And, you know, it had existed before. And everyone obviously in Ukraine knew about Kolomoisky, but I wasn't a Ukraine specialist. So I looked up everything I could find on Kolomoisky in the superficial sense. There was an article in The Spectator written a year and a half ago by somebody called Casey Michel, I believe, of the Hudson Institute. And that article was called Who is Kolomoisky? And at some point, possibly halfway through the article, he said, actually, to be completely honest with you, I wrote a fucking book about Kolomoisky. And I thought, did you? Interesting. So the book that he wrote was called American Kleptocracy, and it came out at the end of 21. And it effectively talks only about 2 cases of money laundering in like case study level. One, the son of the leader of Equatorial Guinea, and how that person managed to use the Riggs Bank and then other entities to just spend money in America. The second was on Kolomoisky. And so the title, American Kleptocracy, it's talking about how America itself is used as a place for laundered money, instead of just concentrating on the Virgin Islands or wherever else. So that's all interesting and that's all background. But the thing is that in June, that's when the Kolomoisky case, because London courts gave themselves the right to judge the Privatbank case. In Cyprus, it said that there was some sort of a case that said 5.5 billion went missing from Privatbank around 2015. It got clocked. Poroshenko came in and what's his name? Kolomoisky had to give the bank back and go into exile. Zelensky met up with him many times in Cyprus and Israel. But London was also a good site for the court for courts to judge. So Cyprus said $5.5 billion. At the moment, the London case seems to say $1.9 billion. And when Kolomoisky was arrested 3 weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and everyone in Ukraine was kind of surprised because there was no noise on Kolomoisky for all that time. That was for $250 million. So I contacted Blackstone Chambers, who appear to be, which is not something I'm in the habit of doing. They appear to be representing the bank, Privatbank, who is going after the money in London. I said, when is the case sitting? Because it's sat until the end of June. and then broke for summer, and I can't see the timetable. I found a website that tells you when it's sat. That documents have been exchanged, but I haven't been able to see them. So the guy yesterday was pretty nice. A couple of days ago, he just said, we can't give you loads of the information because we are instructed by solicitors. You can contact the solicitors, but I can tell you it sits on the 2nd of October. So that's Monday coming up. Then I contacted the solicitors. Eventually, they got back to me and gave me an outline. But as I said, that's Privatbank solicitors, Hogan Lovells. I thanked them. Then they have a PR company. That guy got to me and said if there's anything I can do. So I had a look at I printed it out, had a look at it a couple of days ago. I didn't see Ron yesterday, but on Monday night, I met someone who would be meeting Ron and asked him to give it to Ron. It was basically just talking about shell companies and that type of thing. Things that are similar to the audiobook that I listened to on American Kleptocracy, which kind of tells you exactly what Kolomoisky and his partner's model was of setting up shell companies. It was kind of Ponzi, I think. They're basically saying they're taking the money out of the bank into shell companies and doing minimum repayments back to the bank, thus keeping everything afloat, and then taking out more loans and constantly taking out more loans and putting minimum repayments back. So the Kolomoisky argument appears to be that the bank never suffered a material loss because they always keep up their material payments, their minimum repayments. It's just normal business. The bank's never asked for something and not received it. But the bank is saying, look, we can see what you're doing. There's no real business here. You're doing orders of commodities that are greater than manganese, for example, that are greater than what Australia's capacity is. All of these things, they're fake. Yeah. It's your insiders doing it. So what I thought was, so I've asked more questions because I found old documents which talk about Kolomoisky's Bitcoin holdings. So the guy from the PR company said, we can give you the 6-week timetable of who's going to be flying in from Ukraine to give evidence and stuff like that. And I said, can you also make it clear to me what I can share and what I can't share? Because I'd rather have good relationships with whoever gives me stuff that they don't have to give me. So that's roughly where I am. But listening to what you were saying about the way in which buy to let is linked to build to rent and the forcing of the weak hands and the changing of ownership, temporarily before everything gets reflated, it made me think that I definitely don't want to take Kolomoisky's side. As far as I'm concerned, he is someone who's probably done this stuff, put Zelensky in, he's kind of, quite an on-the-run guy doing what he can, but, he sounds desperate. He had a good strategy and he's got desperate and he doesn't really care. He's a warlord as well. So I'm not on his side, but at the same time, from a bigger picture, I am interested in thinking about also how great the difference is between what he's doing and what the people he's doing it to are doing, which is what you've been describing. You've been describing the type of thing that is going on in the wider system. And because no one's talking about the Kolomoisky case at all in London, the very little coverage. So
they wouldn't be, would they?
well, there you happen to go. I mean, we do have a Ukraine flag above number 10, by the way, just in case anyone's forgotten. And if there's a Ukraine flag above number 10, and Kolomoisky is the guy that put Zelensky into the Ukraine leadership, and this case is happening in London, it does seem pretty obvious that it's kind of in the public interest for people to actually scrutinize this case properly, to say who put Zelensky there. Anyway, regardless, if in a semi-gonzo fashion, I attend the case and then refer to some of the ideas that you've been talking about just now, I don't think that's a bad thing. And I can see that there's a spectrum in which they're all connected.
Yeah, here he is. Here, look.
The spectrum of kind of gangster capitalism.
Nice photo. This is Wiki Spooks. So,
Wiki Spooks on who? What's the article on?
The Ukraine coup. Ihor Kolomoisky. Jewish population of Ukraine numbers 65,000, which is about 0.28%. In spite of the minuscule proportion, it's a truism to state that uber-wealthy oligarchs have since the demise soon dominated the politics of Ukraine, just as the immediate post-Soviet Russia of Boris Yeltsin. So it mentions Pinchuk and Kolomoisky. Now, the reason I was looking at this is David did an article on British interests in Ukraine.
When?
Back in 2014 during the coup.
Yeah.
And here it is. I was reading it the other day. I'm going to come to it here. The other guys, you're Bill Browder.
Yeah. Does he get involved in this?
He is in the mix in this somewhere. At the beginning of the Ukraine war, he was pitching in. Browder is on the fringes of, I think, of the Burisma stuff as well, which is the Biden corruption.
Yeah, I forgot to tell you that Privatbank apparently were the biggest shareholder of Burisma. I forgot to tell you that. Which shouldn't be that surprised because they're so big, but yeah.
Yeah, well, in the States at the moment, the Biden, if there was a proper media, it would have blown the lid off his presidency already. The Burisma scandal and, you know, his son and whatnot. But yeah, so a lot of this stuff, right, which is coming out as revelatory now,
was around in 2015, wasn't it?
Yeah. So, I mean, I can't find it. David's old blog isn't searchable anymore. Like I say, I read it the other day, and the article does mention Kolomoisky, but those links to Wiki Spooks has got all the stuff, and yeah, I mean, I don't. Yeah, I honestly don't know why people bother with newspapers and shit like that anymore. I really don't. I don't know. It's yeah. Online isn't where the information lives anymore, Ranjan. It's as simple as that. I mean, or it's certainly not accessed that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. As I say, I'm in a reassessing phase at the moment, but I've got to say, I mean, I feel fucking miserable about shit at the moment. Yeah, it's not.
Well,
like I say, it's not great at the moment. Still, you know, I guess hopefully, you know, everywhere won't end up like Ukraine. It's absolutely disgusting, the NATO war in Ukraine. It's beyond any. It's appalling. You know, Syria too. You know, Libya. You just. It's absolutely beyond my comprehension how anybody can give any politician, any media person, any respect whatsoever anymore, because they've all got blood on their hands. They've got blood on their hands. They've got starvation. It's absolutely disgusting, you know. And the people who disgust me most, the people like Caroline fucking whatever she's called, the Green Party. You know, the sanctimonious, murderous bitch is what she is.
She's pro-war, right?
Well, she would say she isn't, but of course she is. I mean, they're
look at Germany.
Misanthropic, all of them. They are absolute shits.
Look at Germany with Halbeck and what's her name, Baerbock.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I didn't know that much about Halbert, but Baerbock was just obvious just by looking at her that she was going to be fucking
That
dangerous.
stupid cow as well that you were doing your Brexit things for. I saw she was at the Brexit remark joint thing the other day. I mean, that woman is a fucking moron. I've got to tell you. I sort of kept it under my hat, but when you were having a chat, I was thinking, oh well, at least she's being open-minded. But she's like, oh no, you can't. This whole idea of shutting other people up because you disagree with their worldview or opinion it's only people without any arguments or any don't think they can actually win a sensible discussion or carry through their ideas with without forcing people to agree. I don't know. Anyway, I'm really angry at the moment with all of these people.
Just quickly on that though. I mean, I think although I did happen to vote Brexit, and if I was asked again, I would probably do it. But at the same time, I can completely understand why people point to it as being like the big thing that made all the difference, even though it's not the only thing.
It is so ridiculous, though. So at the time, it was obvious that world politics were way more important than at a European level. So on the anniversary of the blowing up of the Nord Stream pipeline, was that yesterday?
Yeah.
Seeing what's happening in Germany at the moment, effectively, the US is balkanizing mainland Europe and asset stripping Airstrip 1. I mean, that's what's happening. And for fuck's sake, sort of people sort of saying, oh, let's join the EU, or, all of that stuff is let's get the UN in check. Let's actually reform the World Health Organization, which is captured not just by corporate interests, but by the personal interests of the biggest cunt in the world, Bill Gates. I mean, for fuck's sake, I mean, can people just, realize I saw this a while back, so I ripped it off to put it up somewhere because on YouTube no one had seen it. But this basically, I put it on Rumble. I've got a couple of things on a Rumble channel going on. But useless liters, a message from Bill Gates. I mean, like I say, I mean, I'm just utterly disgusted. I'm not despairing. I'm righteously fucking angry and want to go and sort some of these twats out. At an intellectual level, that they are making arguments which they can't stand up and resorting to totalitarian despotism to shut up those of us that can actually argue them and show them where they're wrong.
In which case, Roger, I can only say to you, it sounds like we have a few videos to make in the next few weeks.
Well, maybe. I mean,
oh my God, Roger, you've just come in giving me like all guns and blazing. All I can say is you sound like you're in a good mood.
I sound like I'm in a good mood.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not in a good mood. No.
I think you've had it. I've had a good time listening to you, and I have been fairly happy on your own behalf. I mean, I've been paying attention. I know that you're like pissed off about stuff. So am I. Obviously, I've had a bit more of a chance to be pissed off about this stuff because I've been listening to it from you. Yeah, but I've had a very good time listening to you today.
I do follow it, but not as a news feed type of thing. I think that as we seem to be entering the close, as it were, so I think that the global elite establishment who subscribe to the feudalism model, the farming of humanity model, so this is the mercantilist monetarist model, you know, was the lady or Duchess of Sutherland when she said that the Scotch people are a strange race. They don't seem to fatten like the other animals. You know, when she was talking about the clearances in Scotland, all of that stuff. Well, they're going for the close because they feel they're running out of time. In a great sense that you know, this idea people say a great awakening or whatever. I what, you know, it's like that, whoever said it, the thing about, you know, it's harder to convince someone they've been conned. You know, that's the hardest person to convince of something, that they have been conned. Yeah. I think that's it's got nothing to do with being awake. It's got to do with the, you know, that kind of not wanting to believe that we've been so careless, stupid, gullible. What there are a whole bunch of things that are part of our better nature, and we don't want that better nature to have been betrayed, right? So awakening is the wrong word. It's a kind of facing up to the scale of the betrayal that's actually occurred here. Now, I'm not sure how I'd describe that. I wouldn't. It's kind of it's a realization of wrongdoing, you know, of having been violated, spiritually violated by people in who you've placed your trust, and a great, you know, and a lot of advertising around why that trust should be placed with them has been shown to be complete bullshit, and trying to rebrand that now as they are. I just hope that people realise that, you know, this.
Roger, no. I think it's quite difficult for people to be both feeling violated and feeling complicit. And I think there's some confusion that's going to be floating around when people think, fuck me, you know, this is really bad. Yeah. This has been really bad. What's my own role been in this?
That's kind of victim blaming, I think, because
hold on. You can say that to me, but I'm not saying that each one of us is generating all the problem. I'm saying that there are powerful forces that happen to have picked their strategies and done what they've been doing, but we also, there's levels of buy-in that may be very, very sophisticatedly sold, but at the end of the day, I'm just copying what you just said about people not wanting to recognize that they've been duped. If you've been duped, then in some sense, yeah, you're a victim, but you don't always look like one. Sometimes you can be someone who went along with it. Yeah. And by going along with it, you bought into it.
Yeah. I mean, the point I'm making is a simple point, is I think recognizing that you've been duped and then doing something about it is not the same as waking up. And I think the waking up meme is a bad one. It's like, you know, I want to say to people, look, I don't want to wake you up. Of course, you're wide awake. You know, you've done and have been acting in a way that you think is in your best self-interest. But well, actually, can I just say this? Con going on here, and you've been conned too.
No, I hear you, and on that, I think
that's
it's interesting.
Waking them up, though, is it? It's.
No, they wouldn't be listening to you if they hadn't already been awake. They'd be paying no fucking attention.
I do think the sheeple thing, the awake thing,
Can I give you one word? Can I give you one word, Roger? I've got one word that Brand and Tate use and Tommy Robinson uses it as well. Those three, they use this fucking word, and it is exactly the thing that you're talking about when they go, it's time to see through the matrix. The matrix has got you and stuff like that. I do not particularly take kindly to when people who occasionally make a good point use that, you know, because it sounds like they're relying, this sounds like they're saying it's the fucking Bible or whatever, you know, they're just going, you know, it's, you know, or the anti-Bible. I'm just thinking.
I think it's offensive. I think it's offensive. And how do you tell a friend that they're being conned? How do you do that? How do you?
I have recently had arguments with a friend who ended up posting back. All I did was question certain aspects of the financing of the war and all of this kind of stuff. I ended up being posted back Slava Ukraini with the flag. I don't think my friend realized how upsetting that was for me. I think during the conversation, I did allude to the fact that nobody stepped in to help Tamils in Jaffna, where I'm from. And it was all twisted to make it look as though I was accusing him of being... I probably did say, why are you so pro allowing Ukrainians to die in thousands? Why are you so pro that? But you didn't step in where I'm from or in so many other places. And I pretty much got accused of accusing him of racism. And I even afterwards, I think I was accused of anti-Semitism twice on the same day. One by someone who I've known for 35 years, not close, in a way. Just I'll tell you about that another time. And then another one who he basically didn't say it, but he just said, "Oh," he was basically doing the favorite thing of calling me a conspiracy theorist, and then afterwards said, "Was it the Jews?" And I was like, "What are you fucking saying, man?" You know, but he just said it like that, and I just thought, but that was twice in a day.
It's dodgy ground because in Ukraine there's quite a lot of Jewish people involved. But you know, I'm not saying that way. It's kind of, you know, there may be other reasons for that. But I was watching there's a thing called the History Channel or something on YouTube, and they do these long documentaries. There's one about AD 1000, about the Middle Ages, and it talks about Ukraine and the Khazaris and all of that, and that part right there is kind of at the nub of the bloodline. Well, you know, it really is.
You know what I had? Yes. Sorry, just before you go any further, yesterday I can't remember. I was talking to someone completely serious. And they used the number 13 before the word families. And I basically just said, "I'm out." You know, I can't remember, you know, they sounded completely serious. And it's happened before where I've heard it. And I don't know how far you have to go before I say "I'm out," but it's pretty far. And at that point, I basically said, "You know, I can't take anything seriously that's got 13 families and Rothschild in the same sentence. I know who the Rothschilds are, read about them, you know, they're in business today, blah, 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 blah. I'm not saying in any way there's clean hands, but if you suddenly say 13 families and bloodlines, and I have no idea where they're going to go, and I just think, what are the bollocks?" But sorry, you said you watched this video and it was right on the line.
And that came up, and you know, it just in a history thing, and it's in a context which is actually quite, you know,
it was reasonable.
It wasn't anti-Semitic. It wasn't anything about that. And it was made, I assume, a year or two ago. I think the guy made it during lockdown, so it was before the Ukraine war, obviously after the coup, but you know, the 2015 coup. But the I mean, it's. You know, this Nazi in the Canadian part and all that. All I'm saying is that where Ukraine is and Ukraine's history, it's a minefield if you don't want to be conflated with virulent anti-Semites. It is. it's so easy to do. There is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, I found a magazine called Jewish Quarterly, just because I was looking up Kolomoisky. I can't remember what I put in. Brilliant article. Really going into it. I don't know where it's from. I think it might be from 2019. And it basically talks about aspects. It doesn't talk about the gangster stuff, but it basically says that maybe last year, Kolomoisky was involved in this thing called Chabad, along with Bob Bolubiev. And so they donated a lot of money to faith institutions in the east part of Ukraine, which is where Zelensky was from. And where Zelensky was from, no one really knew that anybody else was Jewish because it just was never mentioned. His parents were scientists and engineers and math teachers and stuff like that. So they all just like lived. Nothing was really mentioned. It didn't really matter. And then bit by bit, faith has become more important in that area. As far as I'm concerned, that's not a bad thing at all. That's absolutely brilliant. So that, and it sounded like it's just completely at a community level. Now, obviously, whatever anyone says,
it's interesting because the schism in the Christian church between the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church is very real in Ukraine, and that's the line. So Russian Orthodoxy and Catholicism, the Pope saying send more weapons to Ukraine. There's there really is
I forgot about that.
So my point about Orthodox Christianity is that it's a continuation of Orthodox Judaism, and that's my point on Islam. Islam is the continuation of Orthodox Christianity, and so when Jesus threw the money changers out of the temple, effectively what he was doing was expelling Pharisees, the Essenes. There are a bunch of faith groups within Judaism, okay, one lot of which sold out to the Roman occupation, okay, right. And was condoning the usury and exchange rates of the basically it was the shekel for the Tyrian shekel. And the Tyrian shekel was the Roman coin minted in Tyre, actually, in Syria, right? And that's what throwing the money changers out of the temple is all about. I mean, that's all, that, and King Herod.
Is that all in the Bible? Is that all in the Bible, or do you have to read something else in order to interpret the Bible that way?
No, I mean, I think it's all in. It
is in the Bible.
It's in the Bible. It's in Josephus. So.
Yeah, quick question. Quick question on that subject. So one of my friends does a talk about the appearance of drugs in the Bible. And whilst he was talking to me about it, I'm not always interested in it, to be honest, because I think about other things. But he then afterwards made references to things that were a bit like what you said in terms of trade agreements and the economics of the Bible. And that's something I'm really interested in, because I just heard it.
The best thing I've read on that is there's a website called King Watch. And talking about, and basically it's the Jewish laws of political economy, which are in the Old Testament. Okay, when you look at Jesus and the Gospels, it's all referencing from that. So, an Orthodox Christianity, okay, is much more congruent with the Gospels and congruent with God's law, or the first 5 books of the Bible, etc. Right? Whereas the New Testament and church doctrine, church dogma, and so forth, from the Catholic Church after the split, and the split was going from 12 popes to 1 pope, getting away from federation to centralized power. Right.
You know what? It's quite funny that you say that, because there are 12 local branches of the Federal Reserve up there.
I'm not saying the number 12 is particularly important in federations or localism or whatever. It's just, you see, the thing about the Jewish church is it's not centralized in the same way as the, say, the Catholic Church or the Anglican Church, right? the Orthodox Church had 12 popes. You know, it was kind of regionalized, right? So it's the same in the between Sunni Islam and the other one. The Twelvers are basically the 12. There were 12
mullahs,
not mullahs, but so the followers of Muhammad, you know, peace be upon him, right? So the followers of Muhammad, there was an argument about the succession to Muhammad, so the Twelvers are so in Iran it's Sunni and
in Iran it's mainly
Shia and Sunni, that's right. So but it's kind of like a federation argument, you know. After Muhammad, there were people that followed the Twelvers. So these are the 12, basically 12 regions of, if you like, 12. I'm not Muslim, so I just a very casual sort of scholar of this stuff. But there is the same thing. There's Twelvers, and then there is the people who think that there's one descendant of Muhammad.
I live in a quite Iranian. There's Iranian. The Iranian mosque is right next to my house.
Yeah. So anyway, all I'm saying, that's a similar in terms of the politics of religion. Okay. Yeah. There's this same thing of having it centralized, decentralized, and there's in Judaism there's a similar thing as well.
It's decentralized in Judaism, right? Totally decentralized.
Well, it's an oral faith which is decentralized, and rabbis effectively are selected by congregations. You know, so like Judaism's really cool like that. I mean, it really is. But so is Orthodox Christianity. So is so are some forms of like Quakerism is very much like that as well. So you know, it's people of the book, you know, which can be any of the three. It's just that some people accept other books above the book itself, if you see what I mean, and they tend to betray the federation aspects and the I mean I mean how far you go with this. I mean the essential point is just that people have been conned, and whose word would you take for it that, you know, it's all going to be okay? And you know, the con artists are the same con artists that gave us the dot-com crash, Black Friday in whenever that was, 92 or 93. They gave us 2008, then they gave us the 2019 repo spike, then they gave us the response to the pandemic. They've given us the Ukraine war. As well as the Ukraine war, they gave us the Libyan war, the Iraq war, the Syrian war, you know, countless other wars besides, you know, including Timor and Sri Lanka, and you know, they don't give a fuck about people. It's not, you know, it's just power, and they're controlling people through their debt instruments. That's what they're interested to. You know, if they went to the temple today, Jesus would be there chucking them out, but so would Muhammad, you know, and so would King Solomon, so would King David, you know. So you know, Adam and Eve, you know, they'd say, no, have your apple back. That's what Adam and Eve, do you know what I mean? I mean, it's the same sort of headspace, the same worldview. And so, you know, and no, it's not the Jews. Judaism is lovely. So is Christianity. So is Islam. At its root. So is Buddhism. So Jainism. The faith. Faith. I believe in one God, and however you get to God, it's really a question of just letting God tell you, look, you're being conned by these false idols. That's at the heart of it. So the golden calf, beware of merchants bearing golden calves, and the golden calf of globalism it is a Trojan horse.
Yeah,
To mix a couple of metaphors there.
I was going to say, yeah, you did it very nicely. Roger, shall I let you get on with it? And I'll give you an update soon. Stay in touch.
For sure, no worries. Good talking to you, Ranjan.
Likewise. Take care. See you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.